Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you, and we appreciate your attendance tonight at our first community meeting dealing with the rezoning due to the Candies Creek Cherokee School that will be opening in the fall. We weren't sure how many people that you'll get at a community meeting, so I'm glad to see a lot of you here. We have families of our students that are at our schools. We have employees here from both the AOB and our schools, and of course we have a variety of folks that will be watching online tonight too. CHSLive, we appreciate them coming out and doing some live streaming for us, and of course this will also be archived on the Facebook page so folks can go back that have to work tonight or cannot be here for other reasons. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 6 o'clock. Goal is to hopefully be done around 7 o'clock, if not before. But we have some questions at the end, but we do have a presentation at the beginning that we will go through just to show you the process and really talk through that today. But to start off, we'll go to the first slide, Mr. Phillips. I want to introduce Dawn Robinson. Dawn is our board chair. She has been the board chair for a number of years now and has been on the board for a number of years. I'll let her share how many years exactly for that. But I want to introduce Dawn to come up and share a few words about our board members and also introduce them tonight.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. You can see this lovely picture. We're all wearing our Raider blue, just so you know. It was not a required dress, but we kind of had the spirit that day. I want to tell you a little bit about the board and a little bit about rezoning as far as the law is concerned, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute about policy. But it is the board's decision how the lines are drawn. So with all these wonderful committees you're going to hear from and all the great work that they're all doing, all that information's got to go to the board, and it will be the 7 people on the board that make that decision. So I'm going to tell you who they are, and you probably know who they are, but the first district person is Carolyn Ingram. Carolyn, if you would stand, she's first district. Second district is Krista McKay. I'm third district. Fourth district is Peggy Pesterfield. She could not be here tonight, but she's a great board member. Yeah, I'm going to clap for Peggy. Fifth district is Tom Cloud. And we have 2 at-large members. One is Charlie Cognell. Charlie's also our vice chairman, and Krista's our chairman pro tem. And Steve Morgan is also our at-large member, who I don't see here, but he may get here. One thing to say about board districts, those are voting districts. Those are not school zones. So it gets very confusing sometimes as to who your school board representative is. Now, I'll tell you this board has a unified thought. We care about each and every school. It doesn't matter if it's not in our district. We care about schools in other districts. We care, and we want the children in Cleveland City Schools to have all the same opportunities. So you can call any board member, and if you want to, if you have a relationship or know one of them, please call them. You don't have to call the person in your district. But if you want to know who your representative is, then you can go to, there's a couple places. You can go to the cleveland10.gov, the city website, and look under mayor and city council, and there will be a map. When you see it pops up with their pictures and their districts, and at the very bottom it says map to voting zones, and you can click on that and you can see there's 5 voting zones, and then of course the city council reflects the city school board, or I guess it's the other way around, with 2 at-large members. And so that's one place you can go. But now we have put, thanks to Andrea, thank you so much, Andrea Byerly, she has put a link on the Cleveland Schools website where if you go to clevelandschools.org and you go to the Board of Education and you scroll down past all our pictures and district numbers, at the bottom there is a link, another link to a city website that shows voting districts. And on that website, you can type in your own address and it'll pull up which voting district you live in. And so your school board member is your voting district person that you would talk to if you were trying to talk to someone. It gets confusing because of this. I am a 3rd district voting district representative. My children go to Stewart School. I live near Stewart School and I vote at Stewart School, but Stewart School is not in my voting district. So it gets confusing. So you can go and look to see who your district is if you care. And that's all I'm going to say right now, Dr. Dyer.
And just to brag a little bit on our school board, and I say this when I get the opportunity to, they are true public servants. I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of school superintendents across the state, across the nation, and not all school superintendents are fortunate enough to have a school board that understands what public education is about. And they understand their role and my role and our role working to make sure that all students are succeeding. So I appreciate the work that they put forth each and every day on behalf of our students. If we can go to the next slide. One thing that I'm proud of as director of Cleveland City Schools is that we have absolutely fantastic schools and all of our facilities are fantastic. Whether you're at Arnold, whether you're at Blythe Bower, Stewart, Mayfield, Arnold, any of our elementary schools, our middle school or our high school, we are all have fantastic facilities and all providing high quality education. So that's something we can be proud of in the city of Cleveland. I may not have kids myself, but I tell people there's not one school that I wouldn't mind sending my niece or my nephew to. And that's kind of my barometer, my temperature gauge for what we're looking at and what I feel is important as far as education is concerned. We have high quality teachers, we have fantastic administrators, our facilities are top notch, and I just feel very proud to be here in Cleveland and to have what we have as far as our public education system is concerned. Of course, our newest school will be opening in the fall, Candies Creek Cherokee Elementary School. This is out on Highway 60. I'm sure that you've driven by and you've seen the construction that's underway. It's well underway at this point. We had the opportunity today for our elementary principals and some staff members from our central office to go and take a tour. And I tell you, just from the last time I was out there to see it today, so many changes have taken place. So it's exciting to see that happening. It's exciting to see the new school really come out of the ground, and now it's undercover. And we have I think the air conditioning system is working in the gym, so we're starting to dry out the building, and before you know it, we'll have a fully functioning school. That school is on target to be completed in March. And that'll give us plenty of time to do all the things we need to do to make sure school is ready to start when students come back in August. So I feel like we're in great shape right now. Hal Taylor is our Director of Operations, and he is our watchdog as far as working with our construction companies and our managers that are out there on the ground every day doing the work. And we've been very fortunate with everything from pretty much the weather has been okay for us. Now, maybe not the next couple of days, but at least we're inside the school at this point. But we're very happy with progress being made there, and I think we're going to have a very good quality product when that comes out. Now, for those who, if you're not aware, the school board voted, I believe back in December or somewhere in that area anyway, on the mascot for the school. And we had a lot of debate back and forth, and we looked at a lot of resources. Merle Dirksen was back here, helped a lot with doing some research about Cherokee Nation and also helping us figure out some great examples of mascots we could go with. But the board did decide finally to go with the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is something that will be on a lot of t-shirts and a lot of products coming out of that school in the future, and I think that'll be a fun mascot for the students there and have a good meaning for them. The building layout itself is what you see here, and I know that may be a little hard to see where you are. This presentation will be on our website probably tomorrow or as soon as we can get it up there, so you'll be able to look at it at a much easier way later. But the building is a large building. When you max out the capacity of this building, it would be 520 students. So it is quite large. It's a K through 5 building. Inside of that building, you have in the front part that you see here, the gymnasium would be on my far right. Then coming across, you have the school office area. Then you're going to go into the library and then the cafeteria in the front. And then you have the wings of the building in the back, which are the academic wings of the building. Now, those wings can actually be expanded out if we need to in the future. We know that area of town is growing quite a lot right now. So in the future, if we need to expand and make that a larger building, we do have the capacity to do that at the school. So that's something that, again, we've thought out, and the board has worked with our architects as well as Hal and the team to make sure this school is built in a way that will meet the needs of our community. But it wasn't just a few people making decisions about that. We had a lot of teachers, we had a lot of principals that had input into the design of the building because they're the ones that are in our elementary schools each and every day, and they're the experts. You can talk to so many different experts from architecture firms, but When you speak to teachers, librarians, PE teachers, and so forth, they tell you what they need and what they really need to be adequate spaces, and that's something we've taken a lot of time to do. Now, as far as the process goes, that's where we're going to be moving into from here through the next few slides. This process is very in-depth. Rezoning is not something that you just wake up one day and do. It's a process that takes months to develop a plan that you can take to a school board and feel confident that you've given the school board all the facts that we can come up with. And that's my job. My job is to come up with recommendations based on facts, figures, and speaking to as many people as we can. That's a big purpose of the community meeting tonight. We'll have another one down the road, but we need input. We want input. And that's why we're doing these things and why we have a process to get us there. Now, as far as our overall goals for our committee and our process as we work through this, we have 4. Each elementary school in Cleveland City Schools will have the capacity and space to accommodate all programs offered at the school. Now, that's a huge statement, and we have a committee you'll see later that's working on capacity. One of the things we're really working to do is make sure that our current elementary schools have adequate space to run the programs they should run. For example, in this school, right behind this curtain, there's a music classroom. That shouldn't be the case. Okay, now I'm glad we have a space that they can use, but currently Mayfield Elementary is so crowded, the music room is having to be used for other purposes. Okay, and you're going to find that in really all of our elementary schools, almost all of our elementary schools are that way. We're not using the spaces currently for what they were designed to do. And what we're really hoping to do, and I think that's the plan we're working on diligently right now, is to be able to use our schools the way they were designed. Make a music room again. Make an art room again. Make a counselor's office a counselor's office again, and so forth. So doing that, opening our new Candies Creek Cherokee Elementary School is going to allow us to look at all of our schools and to come up with that plan that will develop that atmosphere for our teachers once again. Second part of this, each elementary school in Cleveland City Schools will be equitable regarding resources for all students. We want to make sure all of our schools have the teaching supplies they need, whether it be art, library books, so forth. We want to make sure that we're making it as equitable as possible. Communication, basically we want to make sure it's clear, concise, easy to understand, and often. You probably got quite a few notices about this meeting tonight, whether it was popping up on your phone through a text or the app, or if you go to our website, it's the first thing that pops up. You may have received an email from me. It's been in the newspaper. We've been just about everywhere you can think of to try to get the word out about what's going on, because we don't want people caught by surprise. We want people to know what's going on throughout the process, and that's why we're doing all of that. Also, all presented options for elementary schools and transportation zones will be data-driven and will strive to keep neighborhoods together. We really believe in neighborhood schools and community schools in our elementary zones, and that's something we're working hard to keep neighborhoods together. So that's something we're working towards, but the data-driven part you're going to learn more in just a few minutes, so I'm going to leave that alone for right now. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to ask Dawn to come up and talk more from the board perspective about school attendance zones and board policy.
You can see there's a board policy number up there, policy 1.703. You can find that on our website under Board of Education Policy Manual, and that policy has been there for a long time. Basically, that's what says how we rezone and how the board makes its decision. It's going to be based on educational opportunities. Like we said before, we want it not to matter which school your child goes to. We want to have the same equal opportunities at every school across the city. Of course, we care a lot about the capacity of the building. We've got to take that into consideration. I know Dr. Dyer said the new school is 520, but we built the core for 700. So if we add on those classrooms, and we will, I'm sure, in the next few years, it'll hold up to 700 students. We're trying to avoid music class on the stage, is what we're trying to do. And the third thing, of course, is geographic location, and that's the very challenging piece, because we have Stewart, Arnold, and Mayfield, you know, just a few blocks from each other in a straight horizontal line, east to west line. So it's not as easy as if you have a nice little school built out Mouse Creek Road and a nice little school built out Freewheel Road, and those are easy to identify as community schools. But all of our schools are community schools, so when we zone these schools, and you all know what some of those zones look like now, they're just crazy. They're just long and they're all shaped all different, but that's what our challenge is, because we can't move the building. So that is the legal authority by the state of Tennessee that the board has to make this decision. So again, with all the great work Dr. Dyer and his staff is doing to help us make good decisions, it all rests on our shoulders, and so we're the people that you can talk to. You can talk to Dr. Dyer's staff too. I'm not saying that's exclusive, but we'd be glad to get your input. And that's all I'm going to say about that, Dr. Dyer.
I did mean to mention earlier, we do have an interpreter here tonight, so if you need interpretive services, she is located right there, hands up. So if an interpreter is needed for anyone tonight, we do have one ready to go. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about process, and I'm trying not to bore you through this, but there is a very intense process we're using that covers a lot of different levels for making this work and getting information and things accomplished on a certain timeline so we can get the school zoned and then do all the work after we do the zoning, after the board approves a plan to get students in place and to get buses zoned and do all the things that have to happen. The process we're using is one that I've had the opportunity to use with our school board and our staff to do some other big projects. One, for example, is our BLADE project, our Blended Learning and Digital Enhancement, which is our one-to-one computer program that's currently at the middle and high school. That was a year-long process that we studied and went through, had committees and subcommittees. That process seems to work fairly well. So we're using that process again. The board approved this process for us to use for rezoning of our school system now. As you can see in the middle, there's a steering committee. The steering committee, you're going to see who's part of that in just a few minutes. But that steering committee is the one that really makes recommendations through me to the school board. We're sort of the filter that all the other subcommittees report back to, so that there's one central body that hears things, filters it out, has all the subcommittee chairs part of that, so that when we make a recommendation to the school board, we're all on the same page of music, because that really helps us make sure that we're all talking through the same same piece there. So the subcommittees that you see there are attendance and transportation zones, and some of these are going to sound very familiar because they come right out of board policy. Communication, educational opportunities, human resources, and school capacity. So what I want to do quickly is go through the different subcommittees and just share with you some information. We go to that next slide. There we go. So the first committee I want to tell you about is steering committee, and what I'm going to ask is, if you're on the steering committee, if you would just stand. I'm going to ask that for all subcommittees. So if you're on one of these committees, as I go to each slide, stand. That way folks in the crowd can see who you are, and we have people in various roles doing that. You've already heard our committee goals, because that's what I read to you a while ago. Those are the committee goals that I read that at the very beginning that are really steering the work that we're trying to do as part of Cleveland City Schools' rezoning process. And I've already told you the steering committee is a filter for all the other committees to report back to, so that we're going to the school board with a unified voice from our committee work. The next one is attendance and transportation zones subcommittee. Now this one is a big one. And if you're part of that committee, if you would please stand up at this moment, so the folks can see you. Not everyone from the subcommittee is here, but those that are here, we asked you to stand. Now, the goals for this committee, you have 3 there, but what I really want to walk through right now are the guiding principles. The guiding principles for this committee are really what's going to steer our work as we're really getting into the deep parts of the rezoning process that you're going to see in our Guide K-12 presentation in just a few moments. Now, I'm going to read these to you because I know if you're not on the front row, you probably can't see it. But it says, number 1, consider proximity of students to schools, safe walk zones, and transportation time. We feel that's important. We don't want students on a bus for longer than they have to be, or to walk longer than they need to get to one of our elementary schools. We want to create elementary schools that are optimal size so there can be a diversity of programs and services for students at their schools. And we want to ensure that we don't force non-academics back out of recovered space in existing elementary schools. So it goes back to our piece on capacity, using our schools for what they were built to do. 3, demographics should be part of the discussion for reasonable equity and similar student experience within the idea of neighborhood schools. 4, we want to use data to drive or to inform decisions. 5, we want to minimize disruptions to existing boundaries. So when we're drawing these, we want to minimize disruptions to current family patterns as far as going to schools, but we know change is inevitable. So change will happen through this process, but we do want to minimize it as much as we can. And also we want to minimize the physical impact, the amount that it costs to do this. So balancing grade level cohort sizes with state averages to maximize staffing is also important. So those are the guiding principles that we're going to be working through, and that's going to help us with our draft plans that will be coming out of the committee as far as what we recommend to the school board down the road. Communication Subcommittee. I chair this one, and we also have a number of people that are on this committee. If you'd stand, if you're part of this committee. No, Andrew, you may not be able to stand there, but you can wave. So again, we have a number of people on here, and basic goals for that: clear, concise, easy to understand information coming out from us. And we also want to use multiple formats to get information to you, whether it be websites, print media, making sure that we have Spanish material going out, as well as English material, making sure that we're using the radio broadcast like we did this morning, CHSLive, social media, all the different formats we can think of to get information out. That's what we want to do to make sure we're hitting the most people as we can. Educational Opportunity Subcommittee. If you're on that committee, if you would please stand. Okay, good. This committee is looking at a number of things dealing with instructional practices. They're looking at, again, providing equitable resources for all of our elementary schools, including related arts, special ed, English as a second language, and so forth. Equitable programs such as related arts, general education, special education. Communications through a variety of methods again, and then distributing resources and programs equitably to promote a positive culture of learning in all schools. So again, that feature on equity and making sure that we're having libraries that are very similar run, or other computer labs or technology, those kind of things. We need to make sure we're spreading those out in the system and be as equitable as we possibly can. Human Resources is another subcommittee that we have. If you're part of Human Resources, if you would just stand for a moment. Got a couple here tonight, good. The goals for that mainly deal with our staff. And in fact, they all deal with our staff. So we want to make sure that we're meeting staffing needs for Cleveland City Schools in an educationally and physically responsible manner. We want to develop an intentional and clear 2019-20 staffing plan for Cleveland City Schools. So coming up with a formula for what we need in each school, and then communicate that plan out to the schools in a clear, concise, and timely manner. Now, I know we have a lot of employees here tonight, but one of the things we're going to be doing is once we get a little bit more information, we'll be coming out into schools and speaking to all the schools, K through 12, about the process and how that's going to work. So more is to come on that. School Capacity Subcommittee. This committee has been quite busy. Michael Kars and his team, if you're here, please stand. Very nice. This committee is doing a lot of the work right now, going out. In fact, they've been busy doing the work. Going out and making sure that we know the adequate spaces we need to provide at all of our schools. You know, how many classrooms do we need to get music off the stage, or to get music out of a closet area? Not really a closet area, but an area that was not designed for a classroom experience. What do we need to make that happen in each of our elementary schools? And they put together a very nice informational chart that we'll be glad to provide out on our website once we get more information. And it's been a lot of work working with our school principals, because they're the experts of their buildings, to get this pattern down and really get us where we need to go. So we want to ensure all schools have dedicated space for all programming, including related arts, special education, instruction, intervention, etc. We want to avoid the misuse of non-instructional space for the delivery of any type of student programming, and ensure programming equity between all K through 5 schools. Now, on these committees, and I know not everyone could be here tonight, I want you to know it's not just Cleveland City Schools staff sitting on these committees. We have PTO presidents from each of the schools involved. We have principals from all the elementary schools involved. We have staff we have board members, we have a variety of folks on these committees doing the work. We have city planner on here as well, helping us navigate through some tricky waters of where's the city growing? You know, how do we plan for growth in certain areas, or new neighborhoods, or new apartment complexes, and those kind of things. So we have a good team approach to this. A lot of people on here are doing a lot of hard work, and our community members that are doing this aren't getting paid to be on these committees, and we're working them pretty hard. So we appreciate their time to being on here and the work that they're doing. Now, I hesitate to show you this because I'm going to make sure I say right here, dates and times are subject to change. So just be aware of that. This screen will probably change a little bit as we go, just based on new information. But here we are. This is the timeline for what we're looking at as far as moving toward a final decision that the school board will need to make regarding school zoning. So here we are tonight, November 8th, 6 p.m. community meeting. We are going to have a special call meeting December 17th. That will be at the 4 o'clock at our central office, our AOB office there by Ralston Yates Elementary School. The meeting on December 17th, the plan is for our attendance zone committee to have 3 very draft forms for the school board to first look at. That'll be their first look at what we may consider as zones for the new school. Now, the goal for that meeting is for the school board members to give us input so that our committees can go back after Christmas break and tweak the plan based on what the school board has seen in the first draft. Now, we will have another meeting very much like this, probably in a much larger facility in January, where we want to roll out those plans once they've been tweaked based on board members' thoughts, so we can share the 3 draft plans with the community. And I have a feeling we'll have a lot more people at that meeting than we have at this one when we talk about 3 draft plans coming out in January. So that's going to be the goal, is in January we'd have 3 draft plans to share out. We'd probably have a focus group type of approach, break into small groups with different members from our staff and school board members, listening to you give us input on what you see as far as those 3 plans. Now, we're going to be using a program called Guide K-12, which the guys are going to come up in just a minute and tell you about. But that will allow you actually go to our website, type in your information about where you live, and based on the 3 plans, we tell you where your child would go to school. So you're going to be able to see that in January, and that will help you understand exactly what you're looking at before you get to a big meeting. But that is something we'll talk about a little bit later. The 29th of January, again, there's currently a special called meeting for the board to talk about the feedback from the community that we received. And then in February, last of February, is when we're looking at bringing the plans to the school board for them to vote on. So school board members in February would have the 3 recommendations, or 4, whatever that number is, that are coming from our committees. But of course, the school board members, they have the prerogative to come up with a plan of their own as well. So that's something that the school board has in their sole authority. Our job is to provide them information and for them to take that and do as they wish as far as voting on the plan. This next screen I'm just going to go over quickly. This is communication. I just wanted to reinforce we are trying our best to communicate out. Now, if you have ideas on other ways we can communicate out about meetings, about what we're doing, we're wide open to that. And you can get in touch with our office, let us know your ideas, and we'd be more than happy to try to do that. We are doing a communications audit right now, so we have an outside group that's looking at how we communicate out, and that's something that's going to help us get better at what we're doing. But that's something that we're trying diligently to make sure that we're getting all the information out that we can. Our website has a link on there, a special section just for this, that we're going to be putting the PowerPoint presentations, other things on there so that you can get on there when you have a chance to do so, whether it's 9 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the morning if you're awake, can't sleep. At this point, I'm going to ask that Michael Kars and Doug Moore come forward, and they're going to walk you through Guide K-12. I think you're going to be impressed by this. I'll take this one.
All right, we wanted to give you an idea that, as you can imagine, with 2,500 elementary students and going through this process, that the amount of work it would take to hand calculate things and do things right and still give you the best options to the board and the public to look at. So we were able to locate this. Dr. Dyer sent this to Doug and myself, and we took a look at this program to see if it would help us in the process. I did find out later that cities like Miami-Dade County in Florida use this same software, and it's a really powerful way to look at your existing students, their information from your database, and to place it into a system that will put it on your map and let you manipulate it. So just to give you a little bit of confidence in the process, and know that this isn't just people in a room drawing lines and figuring out what's going to happen later. There's a lot of work that's going to be done by the program to aid us and let us do some things like making sure that our right number of students show up next year, but also that those schools are balanced and we can meet all of the goals and the missions of each of the subcommittees. So Guide K-12, basically, if you look at this first screen here, it's basically a visual representation of your school zones. This is a model, and we will show you at the end our particular zones, but so that you don't see any data, we're in such a preliminary stage. We don't want to show anything too specific. The zones get placed on the map, and you're able to see all the outlines based on what your current zones are at first. Andy, you can go ahead one slide. Now, what you do is you connect that to your student information system. So that's where my realm came in, is we connect our student information to this to be able to visualize each dot on the screen becomes one of your students. And we're able to manipulate that and look at sections and how many grade levels, how many first graders, second graders, third graders, but we can also look at ethnicity and race. We can look at free and reduced and all those things. One of the most powerful tools, and if you can flip over and show that video, is you can literally draw shapes on your own map with your own data. And this is a video of a training that we were doing when he actually did this. We can go down to a neighborhood, start drawing a line or a polygon shape around that area, and what it does, hopefully it's running, what it does is when it ends up creating the shape, you can see him drawing around property lines here and drawing around a neighborhood that he wants to look at to maybe potentially move to a different part or a different zone. When he finishes up that shape, it will on the left update and tell you exactly what you just selected. How many of each grade level are in that area? What will that do basically? Andy, you can switch back over and go to the next slide. Now, you saw in that video that you can see property lines. So we've also worked with our city officials and county officials to bring in actual parcels. So when we draw these zones, we don't want to cut across your backyard or split a property in half. So we want to make sure that when we draw the zones, we're accurate down to the property line. So that's able to help us do that. The most powerful part, because I would be the one that would be hand calculating this if we didn't have the software, is when Mr. Moore makes a decision and draws a polygon and reshapes something, we don't have to send that back to somebody's office to go calculate and make new spreadsheets. The software itself will show you what did you have before and what impact would that have after that change. So the software itself calculates in real time and gives you an impact report. Go ahead, Andy, to the last slide. And we did want to show you, we do actually have this working with our data. These are our zones and our students. And you can see we've got our school zones in there. We've got all our students. Each dot on that screen has a lot of information about being ESL, grade level, economically disadvantaged, all those types of things that we're able to look at. But we just wanted to give you an idea of this program and that we are using it so you have a little bit more confidence in the process itself. And so you know what you're looking at. This area up here is Ross Yates. This is Mayfield. This is the Mayfield zone where we currently are. This long zone right here is Arnold. Arnold is the craziest zone I've ever seen. Black Bower is down here, of course Stewart is right in the middle. And something that Dr. Dyer had mentioned earlier, that's one of the challenges that we have. Because when you look at Ross Yates, that's nice and clean. It's up on the northwest part of the city. Mayfield, for the most part, is nice and clean. As far as what I mean by that is it's a clean
zone. Blythe Bower is the same. It's when you get into this area of Mayfield, of course, Arnold and Stewart, that's where some of the challenges lie. Because if you look at that, that's pretty densely populated. Okay? And something Mr. Carr said a moment ago, that's the neat thing about this program, is that every one of these dots you see up here represents a student. And the data that we know, that we get from this program, it lets us know, this ethnicity, socioeconomic, ESL, special ed. It gives us all that information that's pulled from our student information system, as well as being pulled from tax records. When we went with this company, their work before we were able to really start working on it is that they contacted our city, got the tax records, the utilities, our student information system, and it's updated nightly. So as students enroll into our school system, or as things change, that information is updated every day. So we have the newest, most recent information to make these decisions from. So when we start working on these zones and building a new zone and changing things up a little bit, it's going to be the most data-driven process that it possibly can be, and as transparent as it can be.
When I was, go back one screen, Andy, I'm sorry. When I was meeting with superintendents and we started talking about rezoning, because that's, you get around a table with a group and you're all talking about rezoning and things that you've done. I learned about this from another superintendent across the state. And when I heard about this program and I sent it to Doug and to Michael to check out, they were both extremely excited. And it answered a real question for us about how can we make this process as data-driven and as scientific as possible to give the school board the absolute best information we can. And this program does that for us. Technology doesn't solve all problems in the world, but it sure does help. And it helps us to make this process where it's not guesswork, or it's not us hand calculating or thinking or feeling this might be a good thing. We can actually draw it out, redraw it, draw it again, until we feel confident that we have a good plan moving forward. So I think this is going to help us quite a bit. Next on the agenda, we have Hal Taylor, who's going to come and talk to you a little bit about transportation and parent responsibility zones.
So before we talk about the parent responsibility zones, you really would have to understand funding for transportation. It's not something that you see too much. It doesn't come up in too many school board meetings. But we have two main areas that we get funding for the school buses. One's the actual buses. Your city taxes go to pay for those buses. You passed a half-cent sales tax. It pays for buildings, capital projects, school buses. School buses right now are running close to about $100,000 a piece. They're an expensive vehicle. And so when you pay your city taxes, you're paying for those buses and for the equipment to keep those buses going. Now, the other piece is the operating piece. Okay, the BEP, which is the state funding for education that pays a lot of our fees towards, or for our teacher salaries and to keep our operating systems going in the school system, also pays for the operation of the transportation department. So since they have some say in the operation of the department, they get to make regulations for the operations department as well. And so for transportation, they ask that we have parent responsibility zones. Those are zones that school buses don't pick up in. Those are zones that are going to be close to the school. Presently we have a couple of areas where we actually pick up one street over from the school. So when we take their funding, we agree that we're going to follow their regulations with our transportation zones. So through technology, even though it's getting a lot better, and as you've seen, it's pretty amazing what we can do with it. The state's also easier, can monitor things better. They can see about parent responsibility zones, and they've come back and asked us at Cleveland to put those back into